Awalé Resources just announced another super high grade hole, is what I'd call it. It's 580 gram meters hole. So it is 29 meters of 20 grams. But the stock fell on the news. So we'll interview the CEO. Well, I will interview the CEO later on in the episode. I know Luke has to go in just about 30 minutes or so. We'll also talk about whether it's still undervalued, whether Awalé at, what is it, about a $40 million market, 30 million enterprise value, because they have over $10 million in cash right now. Luke and I will talk about whether it's still undervalued at this stage or not. Spoilers, what I might think. Obviously, I'm biased here because Awalé is a paying client of mine, and I also own, to my portfolio at least, a lot of shares. Then we also have a Filo, whatever you want to call it, neurology play. And maybe I shouldn't call it this, but this is a stock that just went up 67% this week. So we'll talk about this. Then Luke had a Shell pick from a few weeks. So it was a Shell company that he announced or talked to me about a few weeks ago, maybe a couple of months ago, where he was like, "Oh, something's going on with this company. It's, I believe, sub $1 million market cap at the time, and it's now up over 5 times. So yeah, I think it's 6.5 cents, something along those lines. So we'll talk about that, and then we'll also talk about Luke is now on to what I would call nickel Hopium play, Luke, but I've been way more wrong than right so far. So maybe ignore what I have to say. And let's give you the word here, Luke, again, because Mogotes, whatever you want to call it, Mogotes Metals, which is well, now after having gone up 67% last week, it's now a $30 million market cap company with over $1 million worth of volume last week, which is obviously definitely notable for a summer in junior mining, or in junior mining in general. $1 million worth of volume is notable. But they've had 2 news releases apparently, and this I'm not following it because this actually crossed my desk before it went public. I got the offer to participate in the pre-IPO round, but I passed on it at the time, which was clearly a mistake on my end, because I thought it was a neurology play, closeology play, if you will, to Filo, whatever. But so I've kind of ignored it since. Obviously, I've been wrong, and I know a few people who participated though, and so maybe they should make fun of me now. But yeah, what are you seeing here, Luke? Why have you highlighted it this week?
Yeah, the first few companies in the list are mostly shells with little volume, and typically I want to filter them out, but then sometimes you also filter out companies that may be of interest. So I left it. Every company above $20,000 is still in the list. So the first couple of movers are mostly shells that went up because somebody bought them for $10,000 or 20. But Magotis is, I think, the first Canadian mover that really went up for a clear reason, not because of their own news, I think, but because Filo was taken over. And indeed, this is a little bit of an area play. And of course, if you call something an area play, it is a little bit of a skeptical point of view, because it almost means that, like, hey, they only have something close to something that's worth a lot, and they will likely not have something like that. And I think this is a serious team. When you look at the people involved, I think it's a serious player close to Filo, but still part of an area play, I guess. There's a number of companies in that area that's tried to get land close to Filo, and that's Mirasol and Sendero and Mogotes. And Mogotes just started trading a month ago. And myself, I almost never take these financings pre-IPO. I would rather be earlier or rather be later, because you get a lot of new investors in the story. Typically, because a story is developed. I mean, they have acquired the land, they have financed a couple of times, and they have done a certain amount of work. And then you get presented this story, and people say, yes, oh, interesting, it will trade. So that's a positive thing. It will provide me liquidity. But in my experience, these IPOs and listings, they typically start a bit weak if there are lots of participants in those financings, because there's finally a way to sell stock, especially if companies have been private for a long time. This company went up though because Filo was taken over, and suddenly $1 million of volume really moved the stock. And if you look at this picture that they have in the corporate presentation, I think it's really well done, because they flipped the map so that north is to the east, so that they have a more wide screen, and you can see the Filo discovery, you see the NGEX discovery, and you see their ground, of course, in the extension. And of course, you could argue that it would be the same way if it would just be to the north, but now it's a more impressive picture, wider. It seems to be closer, and I actually thought, wow, I didn't realize they are so close, but there's no scale in the picture. So it's, I think, a very well done marketing picture. Uh, and again, not trying to take things away from this company because it seems to be serious. They have developed several targets, but Filo's taken over, and now they get volume. Also, for that reason, I think it's a bit tricky because these things sometimes get a short attention span. People like it for a little while because of a news event, but in 3 or 4 months' time, when not so many people may talk about Filo anymore because it's sitting within Lundin and BHP, maybe well, with NGX they will get some of the attention, but maybe the attention will drop a little bit, and if there's no good result before then sometimes people get bored and want to move to the next stock and they sell again. So from a short-term perspective, I always consider these plays a little bit risky, depending on, of course, the entry level that you have.
I know you have Awalé in the list, and I have Andrew later on to interview as well. And I'm just noticing that Mogotes is now the same market cap. I don't know what their cash position is, but it's the same market cap as Awalé, but it's way earlier stage than Awalé, as far as I understand it. Now, after it's gone up that 70% or whatever it is, what are you making of the valuation?
Yeah, if a stock is trading at 40 million, there needs to be some sort of project that a level of value that has been shown to the market already. Otherwise, it's only a promote. And I think there's two obvious things here. Of course, the land package is very close to Filo, which almost makes it prospective, especially if you have a team that's credible and you think they wouldn't lend their name to something that's just close and nothing else. And if you scroll through the presentation, you see that they have developed several targets that, and they must have put some real money into it. Otherwise, you cannot develop so many targets in that way. But I also consider it tricky because 40 million, you've seen it with Sendero a couple of months ago. They also are a neurology or area play to Filo, and the first results were not as expected or maybe below expectations, and the stock sold off like crazy. And that's why I always have a bit of a problem investing in those names because expectations are super high, Filo NGEX high. And most companies, even if companies make a discovery, it often takes a while. Filo took a long time. They were funded by the Lundins for many, many years before they made the new discovery. So if people have an attention or a waiting period of maximum half a year or a year, and they cannot deliver within a year, then in the short run, your stock may just go down and you will look at a losing position. And of course, then it depends, are you a long-term investor and you don't really care about those valuations in the meantime and you're not a trader? But if you do care about it, then you may get trapped and you get nervous because a stock is going down. And but again, it's very difficult to value these things. You can only value them by comparison because how can you really calculate a valuation for a company like this? It is based on management team, prospectivity, land package, and all those things have sort of a plus sign on it, like looking good. But if there's no discovery at some point, of course, 40 million is quite rich. So they need to prove something. Otherwise, over time, they cannot maintain 40 million, is my opinion. So,
And it makes the risk higher at this stage too, like where you have to prove something for the share price not to fall, as opposed to you have to prove something for the share price to go up 5 times. For example, where the value prop and it sounded like I'm comparing this to Awalé. I'm not. They're not comparable in almost any way besides them being at a comparable market cap right now. That's the only thing. Geology wise, scale wise, nothing quite that you could quite compare here. So that's why I brought it up. But also because I know you have Awalé further on in the presentation that you wanted to bring it up. So that's why I'm bringing it up here. What else? Oh, one of those is the next one you have highlighted on here is Great Quest Fertilizer, soon to be Great Quest Gold. Ticker symbol was GQ. You brought it up at about 1 million market cap, I believe, or something along those lines. It's almost 5 million now. I tried sending them 3 or 4 emails. They did not get back to me. I think that's a strategic decision, as in I think they might indeed, as you had suggested a couple of weeks ago, you suggested that they are cooking something in the background, so maybe they are not ready to talk about it. I do suspect or hope that they're eventually going to get back to me. I don't quite appreciate being ignored, although my wife might think differently. But so yeah, why do you have it highlighted again? What's happening here?
Yeah, to just pat myself on the shoulder how well I did. No,
Nice. Did
uh,
you buy this? I didn't end up buying because they didn't get back to me, but did you buy?
the reason I didn't buy it is because, and it's a very boring story, but we'll keep it short. My broker, I mean, I use several brokers, but Interactive Brokers is one of them, and they have a problem with trading halts. So when a company is halted and they release the trading halt, the company, Interactive Brokers is really late removing the halt, so it doesn't allow me to buy it at the open. And my other brokers didn't provide this stock because it's a very small one, and these Dutch brokers providing Canadian stocks, they only provide sort of the bigger ones, not always, but mostly the bigger ones. And that's why I couldn't buy it. And my plan was to take out the complete 1.5 cent ask. And when I finally got access to, actually buying it through Interactive Brokers, the stock was trading at 2.5 cents. And psychologically, I couldn't bring it up to pay like 50% more just because I was an hour too late. That's why I didn't. But these are the type of things where they have, I explained it last time, pretty good team, no corporate deck they didn't have at the time. They didn't have an interesting name because they were a fertilizer company. And you just have to imagine a little bit how that could change after an acquisition like this in Namibia. And that's what happened, I think. They changed the logo, they changed the name. It's Great Quest Gold right now. They have a corporate deck, they have a new website, and it's ready to be promoted. They have a financing done, so more interest already. So I think only those things happened, and the stock is 4 times the price, more or less. And that's why I think it's easier to find these type of names and find a multi-bagger on lower volume, of course, than finding a real discovery, because they are very rare and difficult to find. That's the only thing I wanted to sort of reiterate, because in May we talked about it, and I sort of suggested this would happen, and it sort of happened as I expected. So now I can pat myself on the back.
Hmm. Can you do this consistently though? I think we might have touched upon it before, but I'm still wondering. Like it all seems a bit corporate technical, so not geology technical, but it seems a bit technical and labor intensive to be up to date with everything that's happening with all these shells. There's a bunch of shells out there with good people involved that may or may not do anything. So can you do it consistently where you find these, you buy them at 1 million, you wait till they're 10 million or whatever, and then you exit?
Yeah, and it's not just the shells itself. This was not really, well, it was a little bit like a shell, but it did have a project. And so I think it's not, it's easier than, because if you let the company inform you, you let them make a corporate presentation and you let them email you and invite you for a conversation, that's the time they need money, they need interest, they need volume. And I just think that it's better to find those companies before they need money, and well, sometimes after. But if you have doubts about their money raising capabilities, but if you think a team can really, raise money, but they just are not at that point yet, I think sometimes it's better to buy these companies before they start promoting you. And of course, promoting you sounds again very negative or skeptical. That's what companies have to do. But I think as an investor, you want to be earlier than most people. And if you only buy it when the corporate deck is ready, then everybody's looking at it. And everybody is still, of course, a very small group, but more people are looking at it. So I think in April and May, or whenever they announced it exactly, it was much easier to predict that this would happen, and get in at a lower risk valuation, lower risk. Uh, it's high risk still, because you still have to. You're not always right. So I'm sure I can repeat it again and again and again, but I will also be wrong every now and then. So I own a couple of stocks where I expected this to happen and it didn't, or didn't yet happen. So I'm sure I can, but you also have to be realistic that you never know for sure, because you try to predict the future a little bit. And but with these shells, sometimes it's almost written over it. If you follow all these different news releases and you see how these teams act and how they finance and how they, create market interest. Sometimes it's easier to predict the market interest than predict the actual geological outcome of a
Hmm.
story.
I think both of those things like are too hard for most people who have, you know, normal jobs, 9 to 5s, and families and a life and everything outside of the market. And maybe this is just a, you know, mining or exploration is just a small portion of their portfolio. I think both of those things are really hard to do. Predicting that a company is going to make a huge discovery when it's only a 3 million market cap and they only have drill targets from geophysics, very hard. Finding, you know, a company that's going to turn around like Craig Quest seems to be, also very hard for most people. But then again, I think this whole sector is really too hard for most people.
Well, if you look at Magotes and, for example, Sendero, which is also this Filo area play, they were trading at 45 cents and they opened at 20 cent ish. At that point, they got a lot of interest and they were at conferences, they were doing presentations. And if that's the way you get, you know, you inform yourself as an investor, if that's your due diligence model, by listening to a company when they want you to listen to them because they pay for going to a conference, they pay for some promotion, and they, you know, they come to you to tell the story, you know, then you have to keep in mind that that's the moment they want you to buy it. And I think it's better to buy it earlier. If you don't have time for that, then the question is, should you buy these companies in the first place? Because Sendero, and it's not, again, I think it's a pretty good team. They tried to do something real, but the first results were not exciting. And the stock went from 45 cents to 4.5 cents. So you only have 10% of your investment left if you buy a company like Sendero. And something like that could happen to Magodes. But of course, if they hit something that looks like Filo, yeah, then it's a 10 bagger or more. And it's not like trying only to be right and saying if Magotes ever goes down, hey, I was right. That's not fair, because they are doing real work and trying to make a discovery where others have done it before in that same area.
Mm.
I just think you have to realize that most people buy when something has a nice logo, a nice website, a nice deck, and all those things need to sort of check before people buy it. And I think you should buy it before that happens. And sometimes calling a company and asking them what are you planning to do is enough. But if they don't take your phone, then of course it's more difficult. But still, I didn't call with Great Quest, and I still sort of expected this to happen. So if you follow enough of these stories and you do have time for it, I think it's not too difficult. I actually think it's easier than investing in a story that's promoted and still making money, because then you need the discovery probably to make money. And now you don't need the discovery, you only need the initial process. And of course then you can still decide, I like this at $5 million, I'm not going to sell it. You don't have to sell it after a 3-bagger, but you could.
Yeah. What's happening with this next one that you have highlighted on here, though? Just as you were saying what you just said, I was looking at the volume, reminded of what you told me at the beginning. You said it was too little volume. This is a little volume. It's 70K. This could be just a couple of people really buying it. Nican Limited, that's NICN. There's also no news that you've mentioned on here. It's really only up 30% too. Why do you have it highlighted?
Yeah, this company was, and I'm not just trying to promote or whatever the things that I own. I don't own it. I owned it because I saw Nican as a candidate, and it went up from 4 cents to 16 cents early this year. And because this was after a big announcement, well, a big drill announcement on the first impression, 30 meters of 2.3% nickel. But it was also pretty obvious that this was sort of an infill hole. And since the stock went 4x, I sold it completely. But the company was luckily smart enough to do a financing at, at those 10, I think 10 cents or 17 cents per flow through share. And this is another example, I think, where when the interest is high, people want to buy it. And I think it was much easier to buy it half a year earlier. There were two catalysts I had in mind. This was one of them. But what I wanted to show with this one right now is they did this financing, and there was a big flow through component to the financing. And you can see the blue dot and the red dot. And the red dot is where the financing became free trading. And you see always in the week, not always, in most cases, you see in the week ahead of those free trading dates that the stock is sold off. And of course, after the free trading date as well, but people can find ways to sell stock ahead of it. And that's why you saw the stock going from 10 cents to 4 cents. But they still have money in the bank. They still can drill. And I have used this technique a lot of times, where a good company sells off because of a certain financing. And if you're in a financing, you cannot really sell. So that's why buying in the market sometimes gives you a benefit, because you can actually sell if you expect something like this to happen, and buy it at these lower levels. So I bought Nican back at 4 cents last week, and it started going up a little bit since. And I did it with Delta as well. Delta Resources, we also discussed a couple of months ago, where the stock just went so low because they have a flow-through fund involved. They just want to sell it. SRQ, another example. The stock gets to ridiculous valuations, and for a while you can buy it at those levels, only for the thing to return to, more normal levels, and actually do some drilling work and try to create value. So it's not that I just bet on these games of going up and down, but it's an easy mechanism to at least position yourself low and give yourself a way to get out, or at least partially get out at higher levels, while waiting for potentially more drill results that you are hoping to hit. So I think it's important to think about it and not just buy it when when they're raising money. Having a warrant at 30 cents doesn't mean anything if it's trading at 4 cents. That's why the warrant attraction is sometimes overrated, I think.
And the rest still applies, as in shares outstanding and whatnot. This has 81 million shares outstanding. I suppose you're still looking at what portion of the fully diluted shares is warrants and options and all these things.
Yeah, and insiders are still buying. And I talked to him, to the CEO, last year, and that's why I didn't actually buy it for a trade. I was thinking he's looking for new projects, I think, which is not their core focus, but I think they are looking at new projects as well, because what they're drilling, this nickel, is an interesting target, but it's also, so far, I think, small-ish, small pods of nickel, and right now I think doesn't seem to be a bigger deposit, so it's high grade but small. And I think it's always good to have, a second project or a third project. So I think they are looking, but everybody's looking for projects. It's not easy to find good things, so that could be a catalyst. And of course, this project itself, they have another one which is earlier stage nickel project in that same region. And when I was talking to the CEO last year, I mean, he was buying stock in the market. He really thinks about how to finance. He really thinks about how to make it work. He takes the risk himself. So I checked a lot of boxes last year, and that's the reason I bought it. But when it went 4x on a news release, that didn't make sense to me. It was just too much too quickly. That's why I sold. I wasn't planning on selling this one so early. So I think the company is doing a lot right, and I could just buy it back at the same level I bought it last year. And of course, now it will take a little bit longer, maybe, because now there's more people in it, the financing, and who knows, there's a little bit more selling to come. But it was again cheap, and it's cashed up, I think. Well, cash is going out quickly in these mining companies, so who knows how long they can continue without raising. But I think it's relatively cheap, and with mining companies you always have to be careful, because what is cheap? All these companies are big spenders, and have to raise again almost always within a year. So
Well, it's nickel, and it's the summer, and it's a low market cap, so I am watching this from a safe distance for now. And I hope the knee can doesn't turn into a can knee, or can neat, as we would say. Nobody understood that joke, but I think there's maybe 3 people who understood are gonna laugh with it. So good enough for me. What else is on here? Well, Awalé is not on here, but it is down. You said you wanted to talk about it. What's I have Andrew. I know you have to run, by the way, so maybe we shouldn't make it too long, but and then I'll talk to Andrew right after this. What are you making of this? It's down on the week. They had news release. They have 29 meters, 20 grams, 580 gram meters, gold, good grades. In the same region that they drilled the 1500 gram meter hole before, but the stock fell. What are you making of this move?
yeah, I think the benefit of, I mean, we don't have to be a geologist yet at this stage, to be at a big disadvantage. I don't think I'm at a big disadvantage compared to geologists analyzing Awalé and knowing where it should trade, more or less. The more drilling that's being done, the more I am at a disadvantage, and the geologist or the more technical investor would be better at knowing if this is going to be something. I mean, this is only sort of the second press release, the first one after the discovery at Charger, the real discovery, I would say. And when I was reading it, I was like, okay, pretty good. They have repeated it. It's a bit of a step out, and I think the risk really was not being able to hit it again and sort of story over. doesn't mean it's an easy thing right now. I mean, it's only 50-meter step out. So I think with so little data yet available, it's still easier to know where I should trade and to think like, should I invest in this or not? And I do think that you can only really value these things based on by comparison and by, is there still upside, yes or no, and how much, who is involved, and all these different things. You don't have to calculate resources yet. It's all, I think, too early for that. And so there's two things I want to do with this. One is I want to compare it to Mariana Resources, who made the discovery, the hot maiden discovery in 2015, and they started with 100 meters of 9 grams gold and 2% copper. And everybody was like, yeah, it could be a twin, and it could be nothing and small. And then the second scissor hole, 100 meters away, was 82 meters of 20 grams. And I think that de-risked the complete thing, because 100 meters of intercept, 100 meters apart. You just know that if everything between those two holes is mineralized 400 meters at those grades, that on its own would already carry the value. And that's why I think in that case, the company was de-risked. And in Awale's case, it is not yet, Charger is not de-risked yet, because Charger, it's not enough yet to know if this has enough volume, I think, to become a deposit in the future. And that's why I look at it by comparison. I think Awalé has more than just Charger. It has a 100% land package, but most of the value right now is in a joint venture. The joint venture is only 25-30% in the end. So valuation times 3 is about 120 million, which of course is a very simplistic way to do it. You can also just say 100 million, but they don't own everything. So by comparison, what would they be valued at if they owned the complete thing? And in my mind, that would be 100 million to 150 million, more or less. And then they get into the category of Minera Alamos, Trilogy Metals, Arizona Sonoran. And is it fair that they trade there? Yes. But should they be trading at 200 or 300 million already on a fully, if they would own a complete thing? I don't think so, because then they would be valued like ATEX or Fireweed or Mawson. And they have discoveries with way more drill holes into it, de-risked. There's less that can go wrong with those stories rather than this earlier stage story. So in my opinion, Awalé is doing quite well. I mean, luckily they could repeat this good hole, almost repeat it, and not kill the prospect. And they have BBM and they have, the 100%. So I think it is fairly valued. It could go up 30%, could go down 30%, but you're betting on future success. If that doesn't happen, then stock it down. If it happens, stock up. And of course, I make it simple, but nobody knows yet if they can create more success. And that's why I think it's sort of fair valuation, plus and minus 30%, 20%.
What you're saying here, like if they do well, the stock is going to go up, and if they don't do well, the stock is going to go down. And I don't think I can find it in me to argue with that. But what you're really saying here, though, and I think what the message is here, though, is that if you understand the rocks, and if you think there's more potential, which I do, I don't think I quite understand the rocks, although I'll be talking again to Andrew here, and I'll go in depth on the rocks themselves. That's what's really important here. The geology on this trade, if you want to call it a trade, it's the geology that is most important, in my opinion. With Magote is maybe it's where is it exactly, and with Great Quest, it's who's getting involved, and with other companies, it could be, are they going to get the permit? And I mean, there's different with each trade, if you want to treat them as trades. With each trade, there's something that's important to that trade. With Awalé, it is the geology. The money thing is solved. They have money. I mean, if you they have more than 10 million Canadian in cash, so the enterprise value really is only 30 million. And so from that, I can go into how I think about the valuation. I'm curious to get your thoughts on whether I'm wrong or not, but I kind of look at it as the sum of the parts of what makes up Awalé today is low. I think it's undervalued for a couple of different reasons. Obviously, having the cash there in this time of the market helps a lot. They can do a lot of work. I think last time I spoke to Andrew, he told me 2 years is what they can do 2 years worth of work before having to raise more money. I like the jurisdiction, obviously, where it's at. But what I'm talking about when I say the sum of the parts is that The joint venture that you're talking about here is really only about a third of the land position. So there's another third, and last time we spoke, he also told me that he's looking to get more ground. So there's more land that is not under the joint venture, and they have money to work on it. They want to have. Last time again we talked, he told us that he wants to have drill targets by the end of this year. So I'll get an update on. I'll make a note, get an update on that as well. But the point is, those 100% lands, they are worth something. So think about it. What if this was in a separate junior in and of itself that had this $10 million cash? What would the market cap be then? Because I don't think you should give any of the cash in your valuation model to the joint venture, because the joint venture is being financed by Newmont, right? That's separate. So we take the cash, we take the 100% land, and you and I, we go and we list the company on the stock exchange. What would a fair valuation be at that case? Is it 10 million? When it has drill targets, sure, why not? I mean, and especially given that it's close to the joint venture discovery, which is already proven. So the 100% land is also immediately going up in value because there's already, proven grade in the region. And so there's the 100% land, but then there's also a bunch of other targets that nobody's really talking about. I'll ask Andrew about that too. But then there's Lando, which is a pretty big geophysical anomaly. There's Scepter East and there's Scepter. There's Alliance. There's Vakaba. There's a bunch of targets that nobody's talking about. Therefore, I think they're getting no value. So what if we took out those targets and list those separately as well, and we create kind of three different companies? Is the sum of those three different companies, is the value of those three different companies, when you sum it up, not more than the 30 million enterprise value that we have right now? I think it is, but it also sounds like a almost too simplistic way of thinking. So I don't know if I'm wrong. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I don't think sum of parts really works. If you really have more than, that's why a lot of companies spin out things because they do not get value for everything. And sometimes it works if you really have, for example, one big copper discovery in BC, but you have a very high grade but skinnier vein somewhere else in the world, then maybe separating it, because the one could really get value in a separate story. In this case, of course, you wouldn't list them apart. I think that wouldn't make sense to me right now. But so the logic, yes, but I don't think it works like that. I think that right now it has a pretty fair valuation. It is a very interesting discovery, and BBM is a very interesting discovery. And if they become something, that big companies want to have, something that the Reservoir Minerals was in Serbia, then these joint ventures can even go for 100 million or 200 million. I don't think a joint venture would easily go for 3 or 4 or 500 million unless it's really, really, really big, which is not impossible. But I typically don't bet on those things because it almost never happens. Good for you if it happens like that. But so what's the likelihood here? That's the game for me. So I think at this level, if I owned Awalé with an average of 10 cents right now, I wouldn't completely sell it, for sure not. Would I load up right now without a position and make my average 60 cents? Or would I wait for them to confirm, one more thing, maybe a big hit at BBM or maybe at the 100% ground, and pay double? Maybe I'm rather paying double the market cap with a de-risking event because of a new discovery or sort of a confirmation of something, then the level of uncertainty. Because I agree, but a lot of companies could argue they have good geology and they have good prospects and everything. In the end, you get value for one, maybe two things in these small juniors, and not for, nobody's going to really say this target is worth 5 million, this target is worth 10 million, and that target is 15 million. I think that's too complicated. That's not how the market, I think, values these things. So I think for right now, it's a good valuation. I think companies doing well, is cashed up, not an immediate concern from a financing point of view. And maybe at some point, Newmont wants to sell it, the joint venture interest, because maybe it becomes too small for them. If it's not that scale that they are looking for, it could be a good outcome as well if Awalé could buy it back at some point. So I'm not negative. I'm not overly positive in a way that it's undervalued and it would go up like crazy based on today's condition. It really depends on the next drill hole, basically. And I think Awalé should just continue to do the work they do. I mean, they cannot really influence the price day by day, and they shouldn't. What can they do about it other than providing value? And of course, a promotional campaign could help. But so it's just the way I look at it. Should I, as an investor, buy it right now? Should I sell it right now? And I think in both cases, I would say for myself, no. I wouldn't sell it. I wouldn't necessarily buy it. I would personally. I'm waiting. I'm not owning it right now. But if I own 10 cent stock and I'm more connected to the story and I know the people really well and I have a relation for 2 years and all those things can play a role, can also be dangerous. But to have a relation, because then sometimes you're not completely neutral anymore to the
Hmm.
results. But so maybe boring opinion, but I think it's fair valuation right now.
Yeah, well, I feel seen because that's me, right? I have a relationship with the team. I have a professional relationship with the team as well. Wally is a paying client of mine. Although they're going through some restructuring, so I don't know how long that's going to stay the case for. But this is my first big win, right? So I'm financially attached to it. I'm emotionally attached to it, and I know the team well. So I'm attached and biased in many layers of the story. So when I'm sharing my opinion, that's how it should be taken with a grain of salt. Um, but yeah,
And it
that's
makes it difficult to it makes it in a way easier because you probably know more than almost anyone about the story, from people to project and everything. But it also makes it difficult from a emotional level.
hmm.
Leaving selling it at some point completely would probably be painful in a way, even if you are on a win, if you are selling at a profit, because emotionally you're attached to the story, and that makes it sometimes a bit harder also to make the right decision at the right time.
Well, but I didn't expect it to drop at all
Mm.
on this news. I think the news came out like what a half an hour or an hour before market open or something along those lines, and I read it and I was like, okay, good. All the volume and everything we saw throughout the last week, it's going to continue. The uptrend is back. The trend is back up. We had gone from 49 to 73 cents here in about a month. And I was happy. I thought it was going to go up. So it is. Yeah, it is. I mean, it's also hard seeing a drop, and fluctuations in the price are much more influential over my state of mind, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah. I think when I was reading the news release, initially I thought, I mean, the emotion, I don't have a lot of emotion with it because I'm sort of neutral to Awalé. But first I thought, oh, if this is a step out and they have a couple of more of these, then very good news. When I started reading, I mean, it was all about one hole, and I was like, okay, they probably have one good hole to send to the market, and but it was 50 meters away, and so for me it was initially I thought, oh, this probably will go up because it takes some risk away. It's not just one drill hit wonder. But then thinking about it, I thought, well, the risk is not away yet. I mean, there's always risk, but if this was a 100-meter step out or 200 meters, of course, it
Hmm.
would have been a different situation right now.
Yeah.
So in that opinion, from that point of view, I thought, well, it's probably not going to go up like crazy, and maybe not going to go down like crazy. And I think maybe there was a little bit too much expectation already in the weeks and days ahead of the news, and that's why it returned to the mean, the recent mean. So I think everything is still fine. There's nothing to be super worried about. When you should always be worried about mining stocks, but this is a pretty good release, but not good enough yet to send it to the next level, meaning $80 million or something, in my opinion.
Yeah, that's well, the market is confirming what you're seeing here. I do think I kind of look at Charger, and I shouldn't say too much because again, this is the very first company that's really done well for me. So what do I know? I'm just thinking out loud. Nothing I say should be taken seriously, and that's not just a disclaimer. It is an actual warning for people listening who might be mistaken to believe that I know what I'm talking about. I really don't. But the point being, Charger is kind of like a cherry on top because of the grade. It's sweet. It's nice to see that much grade being in there. But this story is not about Charger. It's never been about Charger for me. It's about the district as a whole. It's about what's going to come out of BBM, which I think results are going to be at the end of the summer, something like those. I'll ask Andrew about it as well. But it is about BBM, and it's about the other stuff too. It's about how's the copper doing at Scepter East, which is the other target, which is also large. How's this Newmont thing going to play out? How's the country as a whole going to develop? It's a much larger story than just this one target, which is Charger, which is great. Again, high grade, nice to see, cherry on top, but that's not what the story is about. And I look at it maybe from a longer term perspective, and I might be on copium here, as the kids on Twitter say, um, because you're not supposed to look at mining stocks with that much of a longer time frame. But I think giving it 2, 3, 4 years maybe to develop into the larger story that I believe it could get to is reasonable, especially provided the financing situation with the company. So that's kind of how I look at it. I have not sold off this news release or anything along those lines myself. So yeah, what would it take for you to buy it at this stage, Luke?
Well, the BBM result was very interesting. I just felt at the time that the grade was, the intercept, I think, I don't have it in front of me right now, but I remember something like 2 grams over 70 or 80 meters. Is that right?
75 something. It's 1.8 grams over 74, 75 meters, something along those lines. Yeah.
Yeah, and it was fairly deep. So if you have holes like that from surface, maybe 2 holes like that from surface, then it completely changes it for me. And maybe some geologists would argue with my reasoning because I'm not a geologist. I'm reasoning from my own sort of perspective of looking at all these companies already for a long time and sort of knowing what to expect when something happens. I think the story you just the 3-4 year vision you have with the company or sort of
Hmm.
why you invest. I think in a way it's tricky because even Great Bear, which we now know was a great outcome, it's almost irresponsible to buy Great Bear at 50 cents or 40 cents and not sell it up to $30. And everyone who did that could laugh at me and say, "Wow, I just made." I think somebody made. I think Chris Taylor mentioned in another interview last week that another investor owns 1 million shares or owned, so
Wow.
he made $30 million. If that story is true, and he really kept his shares, but it's almost irresponsible. So I think some people who are irresponsible and do these things will, only a few people will really get rich, and way more rich than I will ever be by selling earlier. But you really need some luck by they made a discovery but then made another discovery, the LP zone, and that became the big thing for Great Bear. If that's the expectation, you almost always fail because almost no company, only 5 out of 2000 will do something like that. And I don't think I'm lucky enough to be in one of those. Maybe I will. I've been in a couple of them that are maybe have something like that, but I think it's just too risky. And that's why I think you need to have some sort of trading approach to risky juniors. And that's why I think you see a lot of CEOs not buying stock. They own a lot of options and they will get rich if they make a discovery. But how many CEOs really buy, the amounts I am buying? I think I'm typically a big investor compared to a CEO, and that's not a good sign. A CEO should, in my opinion, should buy stock in the market, even if it's just to prove to the market that he is fully confident that he can do it. And of course, nobody knows. You need some luck with the rocks.
Hmm.
So long story short, I think you always need to have a little bit of a trading mentality, or you need to be very lucky. And Eric Sprott did it really well with Kirkland Lake. I would probably have sold it way earlier, and then I'm the loser again. But I am not sure if I will get so lucky that I'm buying something at bottom valuations and exit at the end, like Great Bear did at $30. And if you can do it, and if Awalé is that story, you will be the right one in this discussion. I'm not trying to make a right or wrong, but I think there's two approaches, and I think that the trading, a little bit of trading is better at some point. And it doesn't mean within a year, but at some point, I think you need to sell stock because the likelihood of something ending in an exit you really want is always small chance.
I get confused about these things and who to believe and how to approach everything and whether really there is one way to approach it. But I'm thinking about, hope is not a great strategy. I'm thinking about quotes like that. Thinking about quotes like nobody ever went broke taking a profit. But at the same time, I'm thinking about quotes like better be lucky than good. But you can plan for luck. And so it's kind of confusing with everything happening. And Awalé, I'm approaching on a see as you go type of basis. I've tried. I think about it. I think about Awalé daily. How am I going to execute it? When do I sell most of my position? At what price or what market cap or at what geological happening and what unanswered question? Like I approach it from many different angles, and I don't have a clear answer. I don't have
Yeah, there's no answer. I think don't sell your winners. Write your winners. I mean, those quotes
Yeah.
are in a way also right. It's all based on certain wisdom, I think. So yes, if you would never sell a share of Awalé and the BBM or Charge it turns out to be amazing, then you could argue that that quote is an amazing quote, but I think there's also some wisdom in every quote, and you should also have a scenario in mind that things are not going as expected or hoped for.
And a lot of these quotes are more like, I did a crazy thing and I got lucky. That's what they come down to. And history is written by the winners too, right? So we don't often hear about the people who went broke because they traded based on those quotes either. We hear about that's what people want to hear, right? So that's what the content that gets created is about. People want to hear about Rickroll, buying Paladin at 10 cents and dropping to 1 cent and then going to $10, right? That's the story that people want to hear. But in the end, does it come down to luck or skill or a combination of both? Yeah, I have a lot of thoughts and no conclusion, so maybe it's a good point to shut up.
Yeah, and Ross Beatty often mentions that he was very, very, very lucky in his life, and of course he should take a little bit more credit because of course he has done amazing things. But I think there's a level of truth in it that if his first or second company, if he didn't get quite a bit of luck in those stories, would he ever been able to raise that same money again and have those same followers again? Nobody knows because it went the way, I mean, the story went the way it went, and he did really well and is still doing well. But there's always a level of you need a little bit of luck, and if you try for 10 years long and you work like crazy, I mean, of course your luck is it's more likely to get lucky at some point. But I think there's always a level of luck involved.
I don't think Ross Beatty knows how to lose money. I mean, look at what's happening with Adventus right now. Who would have thought? I think he's gonna make it out like a band-aid out of that trade. And I don't. Yeah, he's good. I think luck is part of it, but he is definitely skilled and he's definitely good. So
Yeah, but at this stage of a career, it's of course becomes a bit easier. When I look at Faraday, I mean, I don't want to go too far into a different topic, but Faraday versus another company, one having three big names on the board: Lassonde, Murray Edwards, and the Lundin family. Even if the Faraday project completely fails for some reason, I'm not arguing that's realistic. They will find a way to get the story, buy something else, buy a new project,
yeah,
buy Awalé for a perhaps. No, but of course, at that stage in your life, you can make things possible by having your own capital and having your followers and your network and people that are not in that position yet, early in a career. That's yeah, you cannot do all those things just naturally.
so, that's an idea I can get behind. If it's Awalé at $5 at least, and that's my hopium for today. We all get a little bit of hopium each day, but yeah, good. Luke, I'll let you drop off now. I know you have an actual life next to this for some reason. You've chosen to do that weird stuff where you go for an actual life. But so I'll let you go, and I'll let Andrew Chubb into the room because let's just enter Andrew Assays from Charger. Andrew came out last week with 3 of the 5 holes announced hitting mineralization, and they were headlined by, as I said at the beginning, 29 meters of 20 grams per ton gold, meaning 580 gram meters at about 150 meters deep, or well, downhole to be specific. And it's so significant by any measures, but lower grade than what you had previously drilled, Andrew, which was almost 1,500 gram meters. It was specifically 46 grams over 32 meters in hole 83. And this is actually important. I'm not just naming up numbers. We're going to talk about hole 83 as well. And we'll talk about all the geology and all the other stuff later on. But there's one thing that as a shareholder was not pleasant to see, which I was telling Luke about. But so you announced this last Wednesday on the 31st of July, by which point from the last month prior to the announcement, your stock price had gone up about 50%. So it went from 49 cents to 73 cents. But you closed the week after the announcement, deleting almost all of those gains and closing at last week, you closed at 58 cents. What's happening? What's the market not liking? Am I missing something? What's going on, Andrew?
I'm not 100% sure what you're missing. We were happy with what we produced from the drilling. So the fact that we've intercepted the breccia on, I guess, the other side, or from the south in drill hole 88, and got those nice results that you mentioned. They're still very high grade by anyone's standards, maybe not by the standards of drill hole 83, but still very, very high grade results. And so you know, that does show continuity on the southern side of the breccia there. And then when you combine that with holes 84 and 85, they've also intercepted the target breccia and got some nice mineralization within those as well. So now we're starting to be able to join some of those results at that deeper level. So I think near surface, you are getting fingers of the breccia coming up, but lower down, we are starting to be able to connect them together. And at the moment, we think they could be connected together along that northeast orientation that we've talked about before. So we see that as extremely positive and something to, you know, hold on to with future drilling programs. So yeah, we're extremely encouraged by what we've seen in that, and to give us sort of volume increases within the system. So pretty happy. And so I can't I can't explain why the share price went down. That's not really something that I try and delve into too much, because I don't have explanations of why. All I can talk about is the way we interpret the way we see the results, and we see them as positive and gives us more things to hold on to as we move forward. So every hole you drill, the more things you learn. The drilling at Charger is still quite young, if you like. You know, when you look at a map of where all our drill holes are, a lot of them are shallow or off trend. So that's all part of that exploration process. And now we're getting sort of bettering ourselves at being able to target drilling to intercept those breccia bodies. I guess another thing that we've been looking at in between the two phases of drilling that we did is that we've always recognized that there is what we call a demagnetization within the breccia. So the alteration surrounding the breccia is dominated by, or not dominated by, but has magnetite as the iron oxide alteration within that. And then when we're in the breccia, we get hematite zones and a general demagnetization of the rocks, which give a low magnetic response. And so we've had a geophysicist try to model that low mag response in 3 dimensions. And we're starting to see sort of I guess a low mag body that we can actually model. And what we have at the moment is a completely unconstrained model. And from the drilling that we've done, we've gone and taken actual magnetic susceptibility readings on the rocks. And so now we have a physical or a quantifiable magnetic response for the rocks inside and outside the breccia. And we've asked the geophysicist if he can try to apply that data to the model. So it'll be really interesting to see what that model comes back with. One of the deeper holes that we drilled in the second phase, it intercepted 100 meters of breccia at depth from 340 meters down hole. And that was testing that unconstrained model. So, you know, it's showing that the model has potential to work as we move forward as well, to help us with that targeting.
One thing, and obviously I'm biased here. I have a position. People should know that. And although I don't mean to blow too much smoke, one thing I do like about this is that part of your answer there was, I don't know why the stock price fell. And to be fair, this is not what you focus on. Like in my experience with you so far, you're not focusing on a day-to-day stock price movement. You have money to keep the drilling going, and you're delivering on the geological thesis, and that's something I like about it. I just kind of wanted to make a note on it again, although I don't mean to.
For sure. I mean, we're fortunate in that we do have our own exploration money in the bank, and also the support of Newmont as well. But yeah, so I don't have to pull my hair about whether the share price is going up and down depending on our results. I can and the rest of the exploration team focus on, you know, the medium to long term and developing the discoveries that we have made, and also making new discoveries and continuing to develop pipeline targets. So, you know, that is an important part of the business for as far as I'm concerned, because I think that is how a junior company should be trying to create value. And, you know, not necessarily focusing on, it's nice to drill 1,500 gram meter intercepts, but, you know, it's also not what you necessarily should be focusing on. You need to be trying to define a whole system and understanding it, and seeing if that's going to be something that's going to be economic in the future. So that's we've got, you know, we're lucky to have a good treasury, and also Newmont, so we can focus on those important things that help to build value in a company.
You know, I always wondered why your hair is longer now than when we first started talking, but apparently you no longer have to pull out your hair, whereas with the previous management, maybe it was different. Well, but so when I ask what I'm missing here, and we'll talk about all these things, the specifics that you said, especially the possible connection and depth, very interesting to me. But when I ask you what I'm missing here, obviously being selfish, because I'm not in this story for this drill hole or the next one or the next two ones. I'm in here because you have a larger thesis for the region as a whole, new underexplored place where you have a thesis, and you have the money to test that thesis, as you just told me, over, you know, many drill holes and programs. So when I say what I'm missing, I'm mostly thinking, what is this specific news release telling me about the larger thesis? Like, if you will, what unanswered question, if you will, is this news release answering for me?
Oh, look, you know, it's another drill hole that we've got that's showing high grade gold fluid flow in the system. So we've been, I guess, I think we've been proving up a large mineralized system that includes many zones. So, you know, if you go back to, you know, 4 years ago now, when we had the initial Empire discovery, and it's a high grade system there, or high grade zone, and now we've got Charger as another high grade zone, but there are other, you know, zones within a, you know, 15 to 20 kilometer radius that we've drilled now. So it's not, it's something that's probably hard to get across sometimes, in that, you know, a lot of companies are really just reporting on one prospect or one sort of you know, length of strike that's got a prospect on it. We've got, you know, a district scale model and multiple discoveries within that district, and then also pipeline geochemistry like Lando, and others that have potential for more, another discovery, which is actually part of that same system. And it's something I haven't talked about for a while, because we've been quite focused on particular zones in the last 6 months, being Charger and BBM. But something I've always said is that there is an alteration fingerprint that an alteration and metallic fingerprint that sort of ties all these different zones together, and that's what feeds into our district scale model. And so that's a really important part of how we think, and we can apply that learning to extending, you know, as we move out into the 100% Awalé permits, for example, and also as we move across into the ODNE West joint venture permit as well. So, you know, in summary, it's not just one mineralized zone. There are multiple mineralized zones that work towards being a large camp, rather than sort of having we're blessed with many opportunities to develop mineral resources, if you like.
Those mineralized zones is kind of where I want to take this here, because and just for context, or to clarify for people listening right now, the thread on the numbering, if you will, of these holes. So you have hole 83 is basically the name people want to remember. That's we should maybe give it a cool name, Andrew. By the way, that hole deserves its own name, in my opinion. But that's the 1500 gram meter hole. And then this news release, again, headlined by hole 88. That's the 580 gram meters. Supposedly little brother, or whatever you want to call it, to hole 83, although it is on the other end. It's a 50-meter step out as well. But so, Andrew, in between those holes, you drilled essentially a scissor hole to hole 83, and it was named or labeled hole 85, which also hid some mineralization, albeit just a bit deeper, but it was also lower grade. It was 21 meters of call it 1.7 grams of gold, although there is 4 meters of almost 17 grams in that intercept. What's your explanation of that? I mean, there's a bunch of very, very high grade around it, and then you have that hole, 21 meters of 1.7 grams. So specifically focusing on the structure and how did this lower grade even get there in the first place?
Yeah, okay. Just a quick correction. That 85 is actually a western step out of 83. And then 88 is a scissor hole of 85. So
okay,
85 and 88 are drilled west of drill hole 83.
Oh, that's right. Yes, I messed that up. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay,
good. But that's okay. I mean, the hole 85 intercepted target geology, the right geology, mostly, smaller class size of breccia. It does have some high grade in there, and that 10 meters at it's got 10 meters at 7.8 grams per ton in there, as well as a longer interval of that 21 meters at 1.7 that you mentioned. And look, gold systems is particularly when they're sort of visible gold systems, you do get internal variability. So you've got to remember that you're drilling an NQ drill hole. The diameter, I think, is 54 millimeters. So it's a 5.5 centimeter hole into something that's tens, hundreds of meters in size. So if you drill that hole, a meter or 5 meters in a long strike in either direction, it would have got the same sort of grade mineralization as like 83 and 88. So it could have. So some places you'll get more points of gold, and then you can be 5 meters away and you won't get as many points of gold, and the grade is not quite as high. So these things are always going to have internal grade variability, and you just have to, like, in the end, you drill more holes, and you'll hit more high grade, and then you'll also hit other holes that'll like 85 as well. Like I was trying to explain before, we don't have a lot of holes that are actually drilling through the breccia system, and we're beginning to understand that, to get a handle on what the breccia looks like, where the breccia is higher grade. There appears to be internal variability within the breccia depending on clast size. It's something that the guys are working on. So, an observation that was made when I was on site after we finished this round of drilling and looking at it is like, so, a non-quantitative observation after I looked at it all. I talked to the guys about, well, it seems potentially where we've got the larger clasts, there is less matrix and there seems to be less mineralization, which makes sense. It's what you call clast supported breccia. And then maybe on the margins of the breccia, it becomes more matrix supported. So there's a lot more matrix. The clasts are much smaller, and it's in the matrix that you're getting most of the mineralization. So that's where the fluids are pumping through in and around, and it's that fluid pressure that's actually causing the brecciation. And so where there's more fluid pressure, the rocks are breaking up more, there's more matrix and more mineralization. And so these are the things now that we've got, you know, more holes through the system. The guys over the wet season will go back through and actually start logging those sorts of things out in detail. And that may help us with targeting future holes as well.
Right.
There is also potentially some metal zonation, which, you know, is getting into detailed chemistry, but the guys will go back through all those multi-element results and start to look at metal zonation within the breccia as well, which may help us vector on mineralization or higher grade mineralization within the breccia too. So, you know, we're still learning, but the point is that to me, like I said before, we're extremely happy that now at that sort of you know, roughly 100 to 150 meters vertical depth, we're starting to join things together, and that's particularly encouraging. That you're starting to join, you know, from a volume perspective.
Well, just to maybe sum up what you just said about the bridges, because I think it's important. You kind of said it lightheartedly, because I suppose to you it all makes sense. I had to use two brains to make sense of half of what you just said. But it's what you the matrix of the breccia. What's the composition of the matrix there?
Well, that's from this hole. It's variable as well. So the 88, the matrix is just to I've got to use geological terms. It's chlorite clinopyroxene dominated. Sometimes you get hematite alteration in with that as well. But hole hole 88. There's a lot more silica or quartz as matrix within the breccia. Now, quartz has always been present as part of the matrix in differing volumes, never like it was in 88. If you look at the core photos, they look extremely white where the higher grade is, and that's because it is just pretty much all quartz. So that chlorite clinopyroxene becomes subordinate or less than the quartz in those. And we initially thought where there was more quartz that we were actually getting slightly lower grade mineralization, but 88 has blown that idea out of the water. And that's a good thing. It just means that we can, you know, that it might be just more like the class size that really is more important and the level of, you know, the amount of brecciation is more important on the grade of the mineral or the tenor of the mineralization. But to me, that also, when I step back and, you know, you step back and have a think about things in hindsight, that makes perfect sense, because there's more fluid flow, there's more alteration, a lot more matrix, and it's those fluids that actually carry the mineralization, the pyrite, you know, that assemblage of free gold, pyrite, chalcopyrite that we see when we with the mineralization. So yeah, I think I may have digressed a little bit, but hopefully I sort of hit the point on what you were asking.
What I really want to know here, and I do appreciate the in-depth geological explanation here. What I really do want to know here, though, is what the correlation is between the class size and distribution, as well as the different types of the breccia matrix to that high grade. Like, how does that all?
Okay, so we think the class size, smaller class size, better mineralization. And that's what the guys are taking a closer look at. I mean, we'll still divide out what the matrix is, but yeah, smaller class size, higher grade mineralization. And it may be, and what we need to look at is what you start to try and look at is the distribution of the class size. And I suspect, or we suspect, that, you know, in the core parts of the breccia, in the middle, the class size is bigger. There is less matrix, greater mineralization is lower. Towards the margins of the breccia, class size smaller, fluid pressures higher, better mineralization. So yeah, so that's what we're, you know, working on with Charger over the wet season right now.
Right. Do you think Charger is now more a size story as opposed to grade? Like, because I have a feeling that this news release really confirms that there's grade, but now we have to know about size.
Yeah, look, and it's hard. Like this system, it is hard. I've never denied that the charger is a little bit more difficult, because it appears that the breccia is following a previous structural framework as well as creating its own. So you know, it's a little bit more difficult to chase, but we're improving our understanding, our structural understanding, and also, like I mentioned, you know, potentially there is the geophysics can help. Magnetic geophysics might be able to help us out more as we move forward as well. So but you know, it's I've said before, you know, if you can have an ore body that averages out at over 10 grams, you don't need to move very far to get you don't need as much volume to get a significant amount of gold.
Wait, you're telling me the average grade is not going to be 50 grams? That's what I got in for.
Yeah, I think we'd be pretty lucky if it's 50. I wouldn't be complaining, Antonio, if we had an average grade of 50 grams. But you know, it's you get high grade holes, and then you get holes like 85, you know, which is still really nice economic kind of grades, and then you mix them in with the plus 50 gram intercepts, and you know, hopefully you end up at the end with something that's sort of 10 to 20 grams per ton.
Back of the envelope calculation is not that hard. Even I can do it with a half a brain. So if people are wondering what 10 grams average grade means, they can use that volume by grade by formula and figure out what that means, and it is significant. What are you mentioning in that news release, and as I mentioned at the beginning, 3 out of the 5 holes hit mineralization. What about the other 2? I believe that's 86 and 87. Are those the 2 out of 5 that didn't hit? How come? What's happening there?
Yeah, so 86 and 87, that's right. So 86 is drilled east of DD83, and then 87 is a step back behind DD83. And so those holes got peripheral, what I would call the peripheral alteration, a little bit of mineralization, didn't actually intercept breccia. So it still answers questions for us, because it just means that particular part of the breccia is moving away or toward the west, and plunging towards the west as well. So yeah, so if we step further back behind or further east, the breccia is probably not there. It's dipping and plunging off toward the west.
So the fact that they didn't hit mineralization is still positive because it's helping you understand structural controls, or
like you know, when you can't. Well, it'd be nice that if every hole's a winner, but when you're learning about a system, then you know, you can take that into account of, okay, so those holes are not mineralized, and then but these ones are, and start to look at the, you know, match that back into the structure that you're getting off the drill core, and sort of make projections of where the mineralization is moving or going.
But is this helping you then better understand the geometry of charger, or has that changed?
Absolutely. So it helps you understand the geometry, and also you need holes, you need information outside the system to help you vector in on the system as well. So you can't, you know, because the mineralization isn't everywhere, you're looking for information in the holes that didn't hit, that help you vector towards the mineralization.
Right. Okay. Let's maybe just sort of have a sum up moment again here. What is with this news release? What's the main motto for Charger now? What's the main unanswered question that you have to answer for this target specifically?
Oh, look, we're still not 100% sure on exactly where it goes. We're hopeful that the mag plus the new, you know, the mag plus the susceptibility data that we've recorded will improve that model and help us as well. But and now we've drilled one hole at depth, which is kind of underneath our 40, 45, 44, 45, 53 sort of holes. So now we've, want to be able to connect that together, but also drill that optimally so we're getting zones where there is that higher amount of brecciation with the smaller class size and those sorts of things as well. So I think there's a lot more drilling to be, it warrants a lot more drilling. We're still getting very high grade results and encouraging results. So we still are chasing that model and yeah, to be able to join in from that deeper hole that we have now, which results are pending for back into the results, what we know at the shallower levels.
What if because I think you have other holes that are already drilled but not yet announced from Charger?
Yeah, so there's 4 holes pending for Charger, and they will be the last results that we actually get from this program. So we drilled these 5 holes first that we've just announced. We then drilled at BBM, and then we came back at the end of the program to drill the last 4 holes at Charger. So those last 4 holes at Charger were generally deeper, except for the scissor hole to 83 was a bit shallower. And we submitted those 4 holes, I think it's 2 weeks ago now. So they will be the last results that we get as we get results flow through the summer.
Oh, okay. So BBM by beginning of September, the rest of Charger by the beginning of October, kind of thing.
Yeah, that's right. So we should get the first batch. So BBM submitted in 2 batches. So we should get the first sort of 50-60% of BBM, toward the end of this month. We should have all them in. And then hopefully not long after that, we get the rest of BBM, and then after that we get the rest of Charger. So there's sort of three more rounds of results to come, if you like, over the ensuing 2 to 3 months.
Right. I do want to talk about BBM, and we will talk about BBM. Just a point on Charger. 4 more holes. What of those holes are you most excited about? Like, which step out? What do you think we're going to see there?
Oh, look, the scissor to 83 is still a nice hole. So we're sort of really divining in a little, like the first small zone there between sort of 84, 85, 83, 88, and the scissor to 83, which I think is hole 102, and then so we're starting to divine a nice little zone in there, and then that's what I mean. So the idea is that we've got that little zone there, and then we've drilled a deeper hole that's intercepted the breccia at depth, and using our structural geology interpretation, the mineralization, and hopefully the magnetic model as well to start to try and join the dots.
Okay, so that's hole 102. That means
I think 99, hole 99 intercepted the 100 meters of breccia from 340 meters downhole.
Oh, okay. So it extends at depth. The breccia is extended
yeah,
depth.
that's right. So 99 was a big step back, and it intercepted breccia from 340 meters downhole.
Okay, that's 99. What about 100? Where was that drilled?
100 is a step. So that's the thing. So 100 is a step west of 99.
Okay.
And it intercepted peripheral alteration, not the breccia, right? So
what does that mean?
Well, it's the same thing. It's like we're just not in the breccia there. So it was so like I said, we had a big kind of mag model, which was quite a large blob, if you like, in 3 dimensions from the drilling that we'd done down to depth. And then so that step west didn't intercept breccia, but the original 99 hole did. So, it's again, it's not every hole's a winner, but we're very happy that we've intercepted breccia at depth in that second round of drilling.
Yeah, 99 and 102 as well. And this might be a good point to talk about what you said kind of at the beginning as an answer to my first question, which was that there's a possible connection between these drill holes at depth. Talk to me about, it's a thesis and it's possible, so it's not certainty yet, but talk to me about what your internal thesis on that. Like, how deep is it? What kind of a connection is that? The feeder zone? Talk to me about that.
Yeah, so I mean, the idea is that the signature, the alteration signature and metal signature of, that we're getting does point towards sort of what we'd call magmatic or intrusion related fluids, along with the orogenic fluids as well. I think I've always said it's kind of a hybrid system that we're on. How deep that might be is still a question. So, we drilled some 500-meter deep holes now. And like I said, in 99, we intercepted breccia for over 100 meters. But we didn't, I don't think we've seen anything that says that it's like a feeder or anything like that. We've just seen a decent intercept of the target breccia at depth. Now, what that hole comes back with, I don't know. We will have to wait for the results. But as far as geologically, I'm happy that we've intercepted the right target geology at depth.
What do you say? Not necessarily a feeder, but these breccias must have come out of something.
Yeah, I mean, there's no reason why the breccia doesn't just keep going. We're an intrusion that might be sort of providing fluids into the system as it cooled down. How deep that actually is, we don't know. That's the answer to that, is we don't actually know.
And you don't have to, I suppose. Like, you don't necessarily have to chase a feeder for this to be a deposit.
We just want something. We just want the grade and some continuity to the grade.
Yeah. Okay. Are you now more excited about BBM than you are about Charger based on what you've seen so far?
Well, I'm equally excited about them both. The thing about BBM is that all those things that we've just talked about, with Charger things, it's taking us longer to understand what the mineralization is and where the mineralization is going from that sort of structural perspective. It is more complex. BBM, not so. We've got a really good handle on the structure and the plunge of the mineralization. So the drilling that we did, at BBM was really focused in, so we sort of said, okay, we've defined an initial 1.3 kilometer zone. The drilling that with a 400 or 500 meter kind of core to that mineralization from the last program. So this program drilled down plunge of hole 74, and also sort of down plunge and a long strike of some of the other holes from those earlier BBM programs. And so what we've done is proven that the mineralization continues down that plunge that we defined, and the widths of mineralization in the drill hole down plunge of 74, it's wider. It's as wide or wider, the mineralization in that down plunge hole. And then the other holes sort of down plunge and a long strike from there, particularly toward the northwest, have look to have decent widths of the right alteration and mineralization. So the visuals are pretty good. You get increase in strain, increase in silicification, and increase in the chalcopyrite percentage. And we've seen that along strike. So it looks like we've extended that initial 500 meter zone, like core zone, to over 800 meters, and the widths of mineralization in those slightly deeper holes. So the widths of mineralization downhole are wider than the shallower holes that we drilled in the other program. So, it's something that can, when we get the results, we can really start looking at, potentially some infill and moving towards infill drilling and moving towards resource kind of drilling at BBM, as well as doing some more detailed. We want to do some metallurgy and things like that on BBM. It's ready to do met and things like that as well. So, that will come in the second half of this year into the first quarter of next year. Is some more detailed metallurgical studies for BBM as well.
So if everything goes as planned and on time and on budget, you're going to have a resource for BBM out by the end of next year?
Yeah, I mean, that's possible. It is definitely possible to have a resource out next year, toward the end of next year. Yeah.
Are you publicly guiding any size potential or something you're hoping for it to get to?
No, not at this stage. I'll leave it up to people to sort of, I think from the initial drilling, you can give a really you can sort of have a ballpark idea. But I personally, I don't like going down those rabbit holes until you've drilled and the actual physical sort of results come out. So I think, the drilling that the 12 holes that we've drilled at BBM in this program, will go a long way in that sort of perspective. But, I think for me, there is nice geological continuity, right? So there is nice geological continuity. We can visually see what the alteration is and all those sorts of things to sort of point towards a geological exploration target for BBM. There is difficulty in telling people what an exploration target is, because it creates expectations and that can cause problems in itself. So I'm sort of people need to be well educated around these things, I think, before you just say this is what it is, because people I find that people have a tendency to take things as gospel. And an exploration target is something that is very different to what a mineral resource estimate might be in the end, with all those metallurgical and processing factors that you have. So I approach those things with great caution.
Andrew, that's not how Canadian capital markets work. You're supposed to present yourself as the Messiah and tell me that it's going to be at least 5 million ounces. Have you not heard?
Yeah, I have heard those things. I tend to be a little bit more cautious than that, though. And
that is, I don't, as I said at the beginning, I don't mean to, I'm biased and I don't mean to blow smoke, but this is proof again of you being a serious explorer as opposed to a promoter. And I suppose, and this is me speculating because I have a couple of investments going in West Africa, but had this been in Canada, you might have actually been pushed to be more pushy, if that makes sense. As in, like, even if you move toward the resource, if this was in Canada and you had moved toward the resource by the end of 2025, the outlook is still not there for it to become a mine on any realistic time frame that would be of significance to an investor. Meaning, given that this is in West Africa, if you move to a resource by 2025, this has the potential to be mined on a relatively short time frame. Again, this is very forward looking and all that, but this is what I like about this story as well.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I look at the timeline. The timeline for developments in West Africa is in comparison to Australia, Canada, and other jurisdictions is quite short. And yeah, so that's fine. I mean, it's also like for us, because it's within the joint venture, it's kind of it does have to fit in with Newmont parameters as well, because I think by the time we're at that point, hopefully Newmont has spent a lot more money on the project as well and things like that. So it, that is honestly another factor as well. Yeah, so if you publish a resource on something and you've done your initial met studies and you're in that kind of pocket, if you like, it's not a big step beyond that to do infill drilling and start to look at pre-feasibility studies and moving towards production quite quickly. And the permitting process is pretty well laid out in West Africa, and you can expedite it in a pretty timely manner in comparison to some other jurisdictions.
I reported on this in one of our weekly reports a couple of weeks ago. It was a report from S&P Global that said something along the lines of the US has the largest mine development time, the second largest mine development timeline in the world. It was 29 years on average, taking it from it to go from discovery to production. Whereas you have the places in Africa like the DRC is something along the lines of 10 years or something. I mean, there's like a third of that, right? And so it'd be interesting to see how the Ivory Coast develops. I think the Ivory Coast was also on the lower end, but still not quite 10 years. But it'll be interesting to see how it develops, because it seems like a lot of things are brewing in the background there too. You're probably seeing more activity.
I mean, Montage has just got their mining permit. Endeavour has developed a couple of mines in country now. The Perseus Sisingui development, and it's quite a long time ago now, but it was expedited in a really timely manner. So I don't know of anything that's really been extended for overly long periods of time for no particular reason or anything like that in Côte d'Ivoire. There have been mines developed there in the last 10 years in an expedient fashion.
And it's a continuous thing also, right? I mean, development doesn't stop no matter what's happening in the background. Côte d'Ivoire has been stable, kind of the France of West Africa, if you will, based on what I found so far for the last about 15 years, since 2011. But even before that, I mean, development and activity in the region didn't stop because of whatever else is happening. So that's one main takeaway for me there as well.
Yeah.
Let's go back to Andrew, to
Tietto is
Newmont's.
the one that I forgot as well. I mean, Tietto discovery was probably announced in 2018, I think, and its first gold pour was either at the end of last year or start of this year.
2018 and the start of this year, 5 years.
Yeah,
amazing. Yeah, I mean, this it doesn't happen. It just doesn't happen, unfortunately. It is very unfortunate, because I obviously like North America as well. But yeah, let's go back to Andrew, to what you just said about Newmont spending money. They had committed to spending a certain amount of money this year. How much of that money is going to be spent after the Charger and BBM drilling?
Yeah. So right now we've spent. I think when I looked at the end, end of first half, we'd spent roughly 1.9 million of the 3.5.
So half, basically. So you still have another half to spend on. So what you have to spend.
So what we've got planned now is so we talked about Lando a little bit. So the drilling we want to do at Lando is actually RC drilling. So because we don't have that much surface geology information, we've got the geophysics. We want to drill longer RC fences across the anomaly. We would call them in-house, we would call them system lines. So trying to understand the mineralization and geology system all the way across that big anomaly. So that's roughly 4 to 4.5, 4,000 meters of diamond drilling, RC drilling. And then we've got some shallower RC holes planned for BBM as well, as part of understanding as you tighten up at BBM, do we get are there any higher grades or things like that we're missing out on with the broad drill spacing that we've been doing at this stage.
So wait, so the RC drilling a BBM that you're talking about here, those are not step outs, like that's in between the holes that you've drilled.
Yeah, it's like infill kind of lines. And, you know, we're like I said, we're picked up on a plunge and we know what the plunge is towards the, you know, it's about 50 degrees towards the northwest. But there might be little shoots in there that are higher grade than what we've actually been drilling. It is a possibility. And so we've got some infill planned in there just to have a look at that.
Okay.
We've also got the idea is that potentially we'll try and drill a little bit further toward the south and do some geophysics as well. So the geophysics of BBM looks really good. The IP is really showing up that mineralized corridor along that structural contact. And so we would like to do more IP. We'd extend the IP lines to the south as well to see if there are any other sort of potential for mineralization parallel to what we've drilled. And then we've got 8,500 meters, I think it is, of air core drilling planned for BBM satellite targets. So from the news release, if you remember from the news release, we had you know, a strike length of 8 kilometers between BBM and Lando. And there are pockets of higher grade mineralization along that, which I'd now just refer to as BBM satellites. And we have a shallow air core program planned over those satellites, so fences of holes over those sort of satellite targets for about 8,500 meters. And then there is a little bit in Kitty there for a bit more diamond drilling, and how we deploy that we'll think about over the wet season. And, you know, maybe, I mean, last year we did get a budget contingency from Newmont. We got an extra 750,000 US. So if we do get a budget contingency from them, that would pretty quickly drop into more diamond drilling as part of the closing out the year of drilling. So it's going to be pretty active, to be honest. We're going to be very busy as soon as it stops raining, which I hope is sooner rather than later. But historically, it's in sort of September, late September, that we can really get in and do serious work again.
That's what I tell my wife when she asks me to go shopping with me. I say, as soon as it stops raining, we're going shopping. Luckily for me, I live in Belgium, so it never stops raining. Well, it's funny when you say what you have in kitty is what you call it. Is that Australian slang for stacked up cash or something?
Yeah, I guess so. It becomes slang, I suppose, for any sort of amount of money you have in your back pocket. But yeah.
That can be good. Yeah, I don't talk to that many Australians, so it's a good to know that. What about I'm not hearing much about Scepter though. Scepter is kind of one of the things that actually caught my attention.
It is a large target that just looms there in the sidelines, and we just need to sort of get the budget to get in there and do it. I guess, you know, with the excellent results that we got from BBM and Charger, like I said, for the last 6, you know, since we announced, I mean, we initially announced BBM in January this year, I think, the first 4 holes there. So, you know, there's been a very much a focus on those two targets because the results that we've been pushing out from them are so good. So that when you've got that, you know, everyone's got a limited budget, so the focus has been on, you know, bringing those forward, and I think rightly so. You know, they are both been quite compelling targets, and as far as drilling is concerned, very much formed a focus for the company. So yeah, for sure, Scepter East is looming in the sidelines there, and I'd love to find that bit of in the budget to drill a couple of deeper holes there. I've said that all along, and hopefully we can find the room to do that sooner rather than later.
But there's nothing in the plans for this year, because I kind of had hoped that we're going to see like an 800-meter hole just in the guts of the system, at least one, just so we know what's happening there.
Yeah, that would be nice, right? So we just need to get the budget to do it. That's what it is. Yeah,
Okay.
it would be nice to do that.
And you're right, though, with what's been coming back from Charger specifically, but also BBM before that, and hopefully BBM in the future, it's easy to start ignoring what else you have going on. But then there's, as you said, there's Alliance and Vakaba that never really get talked about because there's no need for it. But then there's Lando that you just brushed upon. There's a section on your website about Lando that's kind of got me intrigued into it. I don't think too many people read upon it, but it's large. So it's a large geochemistry anomaly, and it's open. It's already 4 kilometers, but it's also still open. You said that you want to do some work there, but maybe you can kind of update my understanding of Lando or what exactly you're targeting there. Is it similar fingerprint to the rest of the system? What are you seeing at Lando?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely it is. It's a gold, copper, molybdenum, and some silver as well in the geochemistry, just like BBM. Or BBM's got that anomalism. Charger does as well, and so does Empire and Scepter East. Now, and I've always talked about the fact that the ratios of all those things change depending on where you are within the permit area or within the system, and sort of that's I think partially to do with the local geology. So BBM is an intrusion in contact with sedimentary rocks. Lando appears to be well, they're volcanics, mostly basalts, and like I said, toward the east, we think they're in contact with some with an intrusion, but there's sediments there as well. But so we seem to get it's kind of on a continuum or on a line. We just get different ratios of that copper, moly, gold, silver mineralization depending on where you are, and the alteration around these all these places or all these zones is similar as well. So that's why we sort of give them the same fingerprint. Just that locally, the way the mineralization is actually manifest is probably got a lot to do with the local geology and what is actually hosting the mineralization as well. Because when you form them, when you start to pump fluids into a system, the country rocks actually start to the chemistry of the country rocks start to contribute to what the alteration and mineralization looks like as well.
Okay. What about when I open up again on the website? There's not that much information, but there is some information on the anomaly and on the drilling, and there are also the chargeability and resistivity maps on here. Right below them, it says potential deeper sulfide targets.
Yeah.
What's that telling me?
So there is there is sulfides there in the holes that we've drilled into those targets. There is sulfides, but there is also actually a contact between the basalts and sediments on that eastern side. And so the source of the IP anomaly might be more to do with the sediments on that contact rather than a lot of sulfides. So that's why so the initial drilling that we did at Lando was focused. So the gold anomaly drops into kind of trousers, if you like. There's an eastern leg and a western leg of these trousers, and we've focused on the western leg of the trouser. If you with the holes that we've drilled, and we've got mineralization, but over sort of 20 to 30 meters. But the grades are sort of 0.1, 0.2% copper plus some small amounts of gold, and so we just don't think it is such a, like you've mentioned, it's a very big footprint. So it's 4 kilometers long, the footprint, and over 1 kilometer wide in places. So we think it's such a good anomaly that it's going to have something to offer, and where we've drilled those initial holes, we're just not quite in the right spot. And hence coming back to saying, right, we want to drill system holes that a series of a couple of fences that just drill all the way across the system and understand that geology a little bit better, and then build on that to those fences may make a discovery, but but build on that geology and understanding towards discovery as well.
Right. And that's toward the second half of the year.
Yeah, so as soon as we can get an RC rig, like, so the thing about the RC drilling is that it is a truck mounted rig. So the you can't be too wet because you just get stuck. So I'm hoping that in October we might be able to do some RC drilling.
Right. You have and all of this, by the way, that we're talking and that we have been talking about what about an hour or so far has been all on Newmont's money. Like out of the money that you raised, your own money, you're not spending any of that on anything that we're talking about here, correct?
No, that's right. So that we've been talking totally joint venture. So at the same time, you know, we have started doing geochemistry on the permit, which is to the Awalé permit, which is to the eastern side of the joint venture, and it's been focused on initially focused on the zone that is a long strike from BBM. So in the regional magnetics, we can see the structures coming through from BBM, and you know, we've done a series of sampling through there, a couple of thousand samples, of which we've now done handheld XRF analysis, which currently doesn't do gold, but we've got copper moly anomalism down through there, which is similar, you know, to the copper moly anomalism that we've got in the joint venture around BBM. So hopefully, like in the next week or so, we'll be able to put out a news release because we'll get the gold results back for that zone. So I'm pretty like happy with what we've seen in that handheld XRF chemistry. So hopefully, you know, the gold results follow, and we'll be able to put out a news release on the geochemistry along strike from BBM in our Awalé permit rather than a joint venture permit. And that's a sort of so that's what we have been working on at the moment. And then at the same time, we've been working on getting the other applications, at least two of the other applications granted. So they're in the system, and we're in constant communication with the direction in Côte d'Ivoire about getting those permits granted, at least two of those permits granted as expediently as possible. So and that will set us up for in the you know getting towards, you know, November, December, when the skies are clear, to start flying aerial magnetics over those permits, and also starting to use the portable PPB system that we have purchased. So the portable PPB system actually allows us to do gold and silver analysis with PXRF, as well as all the other elements that you get with a PXRF. So it's sort of an on-site tool where we will be able to move targets like that one quickly without having to sit around waiting for results. So as soon as the samples are sieved and from taking the soil samples, we can actually put them into a prep, and within 48 hours we can have gold and multi-element PXRF results, which help us to come back and do infill and rapidly develop drill targets within weeks rather than within months. And that's a pretty exciting thing for us moving forward.
That's a detector.
Yeah, detector. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's we should take delivery. Well, all things being equal, we should have that on site in September, October as well.
Is that expensive? Because that's a new technology. I tried looking. You put something out on it and about on it on Twitter. I tried looking into it, but I couldn't really find too much about the price. Is it expensive? Like, what's the cost benefit analysis here?
Look, so we get well. It's not accredited. So, you can't use it on your drilling and do a resource estimate or anything like that. But it's roughly, I think it works out at roughly $10 a sample. After you buy the machine, and it's got its own reagents and things like that to digest the sample, to be able to do gold and silver analysis with the PXRF. But and so that's for me, I think, to be able to produce those results rapidly, like in that 48, 2 to 3 day time frame, and be able to come back and do infill and just having that information without having to wait and come back at a later date. You can develop drill targets very quickly, and I think that's really important. And you can do the same with, if you're coming in an air core drilling and you do broad-spaced air core fences and things like that, whilst you've actually got the drilling rig, you can come back and do infill before the drilling rig's left. If the anomaly looks good, and you've drilled something on a 400 or 600 meter spacing, you don't have to sit around and wait for 2 to 3 weeks to get results back, and then by the time you get the results back, your drilling rig's left and gone to another project, and you actually have to wait another 2 to 3 months before you can get a drill back on site. You can actually infill things whilst you've got the drill on site, and make decisions in real time rather than sitting around and waiting. And that's the most important part for me of purchasing the system.
So it's essentially, the cost benefit analysis goes a bit further, because it's essentially helping you have better targets, which is then lowering the risk of missing on those drill holes.
Yeah, and look, it's utilization. So, that, I guess, if you're looking at the economics of something and a cost benefit analysis, it's utilization. So you can, your team can actually put together a full, drill target, or if you're doing geochemistry, or complete an air core program over a target and know where you're going to put the RC rig, or something like that, or the next phase of drilling within a matter of weeks rather than months.
Okay.
So the utilization is the biggest thing for me. It's just being able to build those targets in an expedient fashion is really the biggest thing about having one of these systems.
And this is essentially also going to help you have drill ready targets for the 100% permits by the end of this year. So by the end of the next exploration season.
Yeah, that's right. So look, if and I've always said, if a drill target is absolutely stand out from the geochemistry that we're doing, then we would move to get a rig on site and drill it as quickly as possible. Whether that's just, if we think air core is suitable for the regolith where that is, we'd get an air core rig as quickly as possible, or RC, or put in some initial diamond holes, or whatever. We've now got the funding to be able to do things like that without too much concern.
How much of your own money are you going to have spent by the end of this year?
By the end of this year, look, not a lot, because it's all early stage geochemistry. So we'll by the end of this year, we'd be talking maybe $1 million.
Oh, so you're going to have enough money to do this year and then next year before having the raise.
Yeah. So the idea is that we've got at least 2 years of runway,
including doing work on a 100% permit. That is okay.
doing work and drilling those like building targets on those 100% permits and drilling them. And that's something I talked about back then, is the idea is that we don't have to go back to the market, and be in a, like at the moment, I think there's the markets are pretty much red at the moment. So if I was trying to raise money for a drill campaign to start in October now, it really would probably be extremely difficult. So we're really well positioned not to have to worry about what's happening, you know, from a macro perspective. We can just keep developing drill targets and being able to drill them and creating value without having to worry about, you know, what's going on from a macro perspective. We can just continue to build. Yeah, it's just building. It's building value in the company, and that's something that we've always wanted to do, and now we've got the wherewithal to do it. And the other key thing that it does as well is I can confidently go to people who can be valuable contributors to the company and say, we have got pipeline. This is where we're going. This is what we're doing. Look how, you know, look at the fantastic geology that we've built, and I can, you know, people are interested in coming and working with us. And so, you know, in the ensuing weeks, I think, you know, you'll see a news release as well that shows that it's not only Andrew Smith coming back to the fold, which is really good for us, but we've got some other fantastic additions to the team in the pipeline as well. So, you know, it just gives you the ability to build it's really exciting to build a discovery team.
With Andrew Smith is coming back?
Yep. So he's back on board from this week, actually.
Good. When you say on board, you don't mean on the board. You mean he's back
back on it. Yeah, he's back on back as part of the team.
What is he going to be, like VP of X, or like what is he going to do?
Yeah, that will be his title, or is his title, is VP Exploration. Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's because there's something I also wanted to ask you, because I know you wanted to kind of a corporate update, because I know you wanted to hire some new people. So far, you've been the VP of X and the COO and the VP of Corp Dev and the CEO. You've been like for the last year and a half, which I suppose is good because you have young kids. But what have you made, like any new hires besides getting?
So there's Andrew is kind of a new hire. He only sort of we had a 6-month kind of hiatus without Andrew. But we've also brought on another guy called Adam Kashishian, who in a VP corporate development role. So Adam actually, you know, is part of all this as well. And so he came on board I think 10 days ago now. And so I've just been waiting to put the whole team together and then announce to the world what the you know, the new additions to the new Awalé are, to keep us, you know, progressing in the right direction and building a company as we want to.
Any new local hires or any more jobs you've created?
So we haven't filled them, the local ones at this stage. But yeah, there are local sort of project geologist and junior geologist kind of positions. And like I've always said, we like hiring local. So I think a few of the guys from the local district that have been working for us as field assistants, you know, on an itinerant fashion, with the increased amount of work that we're doing, we'll be able to put them into some full-time positions as well, which is really nice and really rewarding to be actually getting you know, staff from, you know, the Odieni district on the team and part of the Awalé family.
Why I'm asking all these questions is because I obviously understand that's going to help you move more rapidly. But what's that going to do to your G&A? Have you had that board meeting yet, talking about what your budget is for G&A, or like how does that look like?
Yeah, I mean, it goes up. I mean, it definitely goes up. But you know, the idea is that you just to make the discoveries and develop the targets that we've got. I think you know, the important thing is that you have the right people to do it and to do it well. And so that's, you know, one of the things that I've been really working on quite hard in the last, you know, particularly in the last sort of 6 months or since the fundraising in May is making sure that we've got a really strong team to actually put all these things together. It's all well and good for me to sit here and tell people about what we're going to do, but you actually need to have a good team to actually get that done in an expedient and on budget fashion. So all the hires that we're taking on, I think, are essential for us to do that company building.
Right. Yeah. And that makes sense. Well, it makes sense that Eugenie would go up, given that so far it's really been kind of in this 50 to 60,000, I think, a month range, which is typical for smaller companies. You're now a $50 million market cap company. I don't know if that's set in for you already. It's not yet for me. Like I still have to remind myself that it's there. But things change. Yeah.
Yeah, no, look, I'm aware, and I think that's why we need to have those changes, because then the goalposts move now. We want to be next milestone is 100, and then the next one after that is 150 to 200, right? So, and to hit those milestones, like I just said, we need the right people to hit those milestones, and I've been really sort of fortunate that in the last sort of 3 months, the people that have shown interest in coming to the company, the caliber is just fantastic.
Good. Well, good for you, Andrew. We've been at this for a while. I don't want to steal your entire day, but what am I missing here? What should I be asking you that I'm not asking you?
I think we've touched on everything throughout the last hour and a half, I think. But the key thing is that, look, we're really excited about the results that are coming through that are coming in the pipeline. Like I can't wait to see them from BBM. Charger is, it is coming together. We still have budget to do more drilling for the rest of the year, and hopefully there's a budget extension from Newmont. Where Awalé as a company is poised and well funded to keep pushing forward on the 100% Awalé permits. And that doesn't happen overnight. It is very green grass, so we do need to do the groundwork. You are very lucky if you've developed drill targets within a couple of months when it's green grass. You actually need to, we look at things in a big picture, and then we bring that back into those smaller target zones, and then take it back out and try and compare those targets, like rank them against each other before we rush off and drill them, to make sure that we're not wasting money on targets as well. So it takes time to build targets, but where that has begun, it's underway. And that last thing that we've just touched on is that I'm really excited about the team that I've started to put together since the fundraising. So it's really it's going to be a pretty exciting couple of years ahead for Awalé, I think.
Well, are you going to be telling that story differently than you have so far? Like, are you doing more conferences? Or any new marketing initiative? I mean, you have the VP of Corp Dev guy now who's going to be helping with that as well. But is something else going to change in the way you tell the story?
I don't think how we tell the story will change that much, like what the message we want to get across. But I think, I've experimented with a few things over the last 12 months from the digital media perspective as well. And so we'll probably streamline those things. There are a couple of key conferences that I think that we should be going to. So this year, in September, I'll be at Beaver Creek. It's one of the, I think, key conferences for the North American mining space. So that's the first time I'll be going to that. And I'm actually showing my face in London towards the end of the year at Mines and Money as well. And so there are, I have added a couple of conferences in there as well. But I think that's important to get that face-to-face presence alongside the strong online presence that we've got as well.
Interesting that you're going to be going back to London. There's a couple of routes there that anyways, that's a long story in and of itself. But good. I hope you're gonna have fun, and I hope it's gonna be beneficial to the company. But this has been a very good overview, Andrew. Thank you so much for investing your time in me once again.
Well, thank you very much for your time, Antonio. It's always really good to have these in-depth discussions with you. Much appreciated.